Hey, what's up guys? This is Anthony from Anthony's Customs, and for this review we are looking at the Figma Archer / Gilgamesh figure from Fate the Grand Order, which is a pretty cool figure. A lot of people were very excited about this. I didn't end up buying one for myself just because I have to limit myself, but luckily a viewer was kind enough to send it in so I could review it for you guys, and then I'll be sending that back to him once I'm done reviewing it. But this figure does have a whole lot of cool stuff going on and some things that aren't so great, so we're going to talk about all of that. You guys will know if you want to buy one for yourself. Let's go ahead and get him off the stand and take a closer look. This guy stands just about closer to 6¼ inches, probably more like 6 3/8, which makes him just about 16½ centimeters, pretty close to that. So he does have a little bit of size to him, and he looks pretty cool. I mean, he's wearing all gold armor, and it's kind of like this not quite metallic gold. It's not quite flat, but it looks really nice. It does have a nice finish to it. And then we have this flat blue paint all up around there, so that looks pretty cool. And then we have the red cape with a little bit of black shading throughout. So it's very aesthetically pleasing. It looks very nice. Lots of little bits here and there. We'll talk about all of that when we get through it in the articulation. But we do have quite a few accessories to talk about, so let's do that first. We have 3 different interchangeable faces. We have the smiling face that comes on him in the package. We have one face where he's just looking off to the side. It's fairly neutral. And then we have one face where he's clearly yelling. We do have a folded arms accessory for him while he's wearing the armor, so you just pop off the lower arms and swap the folded arms on, and that works no problem. We have a bunch of different hands for the gold version. We have the 2 fist hands that come on him in the package, 2 wide open hands, one kind of, I don't know, in pain type of hand with another kind of style pose hand, and then the 2 gripping hands for his accessory, which means we have to talk about the accessory, which is his lance, which is incredibly well done. The blue and gold area is very nice, and then the red and black area, each of the little segments can spin. Just very, very nice attention to detail on this accessory, so that's awesome. And then we have an interchangeable upper body, which is without all of the armor. It's molded in a very nice skin tone. No shading on the skin, however. We do have the painted gold and the painted red lines, which do look very nice, and it does have alternate hair, a different set of hair for that head. All of the faces are interchangeable across the different heads, though. And then we have some interchangeable hands for that unarmored body. We have the 2 fist hands that come on it, 2 style pose hands. Then we have the 2 kind of in pain and maybe style pose hand, and then the 2 gripping hands. So essentially we have the same sets of hands for both bodies. And then lastly, we have the chain accessory, which I do believe is made out of stainless steel because it is not magnetic. I wasn't able to stick a magnet to it, but it definitely feels like metal. Very nicely detailed, and of course we have our Figma display stand. So more than enough posing options. I mean, you paid for him, this guy was more expensive, but we do have a lot of stuff in the package, so that's pretty cool. As far as the articulation goes, the head is on a standard Figma joint. Let me go ahead and pop the face off so you can see that. Both heads are fairly similar. This one is slightly less offset than the other one, but it's pretty close. They have the ball peg going into the head, ball hinge, and then another, I guess that's a straight peg going into the neck. So you'll be able to pose the head pretty well, though it can get a little cumbersome. The neck itself is on a ball peg, which moves around all right. It's not the best, but it is okay. For the shoulders, we have almost like a Revoltech joint, which is not my favorite thing, but it's not terrible on this guy. We have a hinge over here with a peg that rotates around inside the body, and then that goes over to a ball peg. I guess it's more like the Figma solid snake. A ball peg that goes into the upper shoulder, so you kind of just have a double jointed arm, which does allow it to move around pretty well, except for going out to the side. That's very limited, and the shoulder pad being on a ball peg doesn't really help. It just moves around a little bit, which is kind of inconsequential, so just be aware that you'll be able to move the arm around no problem, unless you want to go out to the side. Having the double joint does give you kind of a butterfly effect, so that works nicely. I know butterfly effect is a different thing, but you get what I'm saying. It moves nicely except for out to the side. We'll leave it at that. We do have a bicep swivel built into that whole situation, so that's good. Single jointed elbow, not the best range, only about 90 degrees because of this cap here for the elbow. Pretty limiting. Ball hinge for the wrist, which works just fine. For the torso, we just have a single ball peg down here, which lets the entire thing move around. And then you want to pop that off, and that gives you your other torso, which I'll show you in a second. This piece can come off, And then you can either put the other torso on there. I think you have to take that piece off. Let's just do that. I'm not sure. I didn't test it out ahead of time, but I'm pretty sure that piece stays off. Yeah. So you want to leave it just like that when you put him on there. So this guy just floats around, doesn't really do much. Okay. We'll cover the torso in just a second though. For now, let's talk about the hips and everything else. These guys are on little tiny ball hinges so they can move around and get out of the way. They are connected to the big piece, which is on a big hinge, which can rotate and move around. So that's pretty good. It does get cumbersome, but it does do a good job of getting out of the way. It won't necessarily be easy to pose him with this hanging out there, but it can move, so that's really good. And then this piece back here is on a hinge and a swivel also, so that can move around. On the front, this piece is on a hinge, but this piece is not. So that one's just kind of going to move around. Hopefully you can get it out of the way. I was hoping the hips could do a little bit better, but they are kind of limited because they're inside this floating crotch piece. I don't know how well you're going to be able to see this. It's fairly well close to the hips. It doesn't, I didn't word that right at all, but it kind of limits the hips a lot because it's a snug fit. But you have your standard Figma ball peg for either hip, and you have a thigh swivel, so you can move the legs around fairly well regardless. Single jointed knee, this thing gets in the way, just like on the elbows. It's not terrible, but it's not great. For the ankles, it's again your standard Figma ankle. This is a hard piece of plastic, so it will get in the way some, but you still get really good range out of that, so I'm happy. As far as the ankle rocker goes, almost non-existent due to the sculpt of this armor right here. You really can't rock the ankle too much at all. It looks like you should be able to swivel it at this piece right here, but it doesn't want to go on either foot, so I'm guessing... Yeah, now that I look closer at it, there's no swivel. It's just a separate piece. They just put it together that way. So no ankle rocker, no swivel, but you do get a toe hinge, which has incredibly good range. So I guess that could be useful, but it's not exactly the stiffest joint. So you won't want to hold too much weight on that. Now for this torso, you can see we just have a single ball peg for the bottom. So that'll move around a little bit, but the way it fits in there, it really just rotates. Not much leaning to do either way. The neck is the same up here. Down here, we have a ball peg in the neck, but it's not great because you can see inside of it. So you're really going to want to either just lean it forward or side to side a little bit. Don't lean it too far back. But it is there, so that'll help. For the shoulders, it's basically your standard Figma joints, which don't afford the best range of motion on these shoulders. But at least they did a better job on the anatomy on this guy than they do most of the time, so I guess that's okay. You get a little bit of a bicep swivel up here, and of course you can rotate down here at the elbow if you need to. Pretty good range out of that elbow, and then you have your standard ball hinge for the wrist. And for the upper torso, I'm pretty sure it's just your standard Figma hinge because it doesn't have the best range and it doesn't really want to lean like it would for a ball peg. So I'm pretty sure there's a hinge in there that lets it go forward and back, and then when you're rotating it up here, it's actually rotating around one of the pegs on that hinge, which isn't bad. It has some decent range, but it definitely could be better, and we still do have these huge cavities underneath the armpits that really cut out the rib cage, and it's not a great design. They really need to work on their anatomy for their people. They keep screwing stuff up like they did for Saitama, and then this one it's not great either, so it's kind of disappointing. But ultimately, you're probably wondering, after all of that, is it worth getting? And I would say, if you really like the character, then yes. It's not the best figure in the world, but otherwise, it's pretty good. Does that go that way, or does it goes the other way? I can't remember which way it goes. No, it goes like that. So yeah, it's a cool figure. It's not perfect. It definitely has a few problems here and there, but having the opportunity to pose it with both the armor and without, that's awesome. And then he has just so many accessories, that's also awesome. And it looks very nice on a shelf. So yeah, I think I recommend it, especially with that really cool javelin accessory or lance. You really can't beat it. So yeah, I think I do recommend it. So there you go, guys. Thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. I have new videos up every single day. We talk about action figures, movies, TV shows, video games, all kinds of fun stuff. So make sure you turn on notifications and come back for all of that. Make sure you give the video a thumbs up if you liked it. And in the meantime, keep collecting.